You stop at 12:25 so we can have questions.
Got it.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Stacy Scott, Marketing Coordinator here at Wickham Financial and Insurance Services, and I'm your host for today. Thank you so much for joining us today for our May Lunch and Learn. We host our monthly Lunch and Learn at noon on the last Wednesday of every month. So hopefully you can spend your lunch break with us on those Wednesdays and we can share some valuable information with you. We've got an interesting session lined up today. Graham is going to be kicking things off with some current market insight, and then we'll be joined by Lee Childers of Dato Technologies, and he's going to tell us a little bit about how to protect ourselves from being a victim of cybercrime. And then, as always, we'll have a few minutes set aside at the end for a Q&A session. With that in mind, if you do think of any questions throughout the presentation, just please type them in the Q&A section of the chat box, and we will address those at the end of the presentation. And also be aware that Graham's calendar is going to pop up periodically throughout the presentation. So if you would like to schedule some time with him, that would be a great time to do it. And now I'll turn things over to Graham.
Fantastic. Thank you, Stacy. Thank all of y'all for joining us once again on your lunch break. You know, again, I always try to make these a very timely, very pertinent to maybe what's happening right now. So I'm excited about having Lee, part of Data Tech, on this call today, talking about cybercrime attacks, how to prevent it, how to protect yourself. Because if we like it or not, probably sooner or later, if you haven't experienced, you might know someone who have experienced that. And certainly if you're in Georgia, you've experienced it with the Colonial Pipeline shutdown, with the petroleum that we were having trouble getting to at least gas for our cars. But let me go ahead and jump in. I'm really deferring most of the time to Lee because it's such a great topic he's going to cover today. But I do want to give you all some substance on the markets. You know, I was looking back and kind of thinking a bit about this call and kind of what's going on. So the last call, and even in the weekly wrap-ups, I talked about rotations, right? So sometimes it doesn't have to be that the markets had these big pullbacks, even though you get those 5, 10, 15, 20% that we talked about in the last Lunch and Learns and also the weekly wrap-up. But sometimes you get these internal ones. So let's think about it. A third of the U.S. equities are in a 20% correction or bear market. So 20% or more is considered a bear market, a third of U.S. equities. If we think about it a little bit further, we got about half of those equities have about a 10% or more correction at this particular point. And 1 out of 12 stocks are down at least 50% from their 52-week high. So if we're looking at the indices, you know, you're looking at the S&P and the Dow and the NASDAQ, they're all within 1% to 4% from their highs. So you might be looking at those saying, wow, you know, this market's hitting new highs and whatnot, must be overpriced, overvalued. Not necessarily. There's certain sectors of the market, certain stocks in the market that are down. They're not hitting new highs for certain reasons. So as I always like to think about, there's an opportunity somewhere, right? Again, Stacy just popped up my calendar. If you want to talk to me, any one of my team members at Wickham Financial and Insurance, just hit that. And if it's not for me, we can get it on the appropriate calendar. But feel free to do so. You know, I went ahead and looked a little bit further and I said, okay, what are some reasonable values out there outside of the things that might be attractive, down 10, 20, or 50%? What are some areas, maybe geographically? And I was thinking about a bit overseas. If you're a client of ours, you already know we lean a bit overseas. It's not an overweight for us, but it is a strong weighting that we encourage because we think the valuations look much more attractive overseas. You know, Europe has underperformed, for example. It's a very established economy like the United States or area, but, you know, they've lagged the United States over the years. Their markets are hitting new highs, but we are also seeing something that's really interesting. I think they just came out with COVID vaccinations in the United States. I think we're a third or 50% vaccinated in the US. You know, they're 3 to 6 months behind us over in Europe. So think about that. If they're 3 to 6 months behind us in vaccinations, they might be 3 to 6 months plus in terms of reopening and getting out and about. So could be opportunities from a valuation reopening standpoint. Other way to think about it too, if you look at a lot of their indices, they tend to be what's called value oriented. So they might have more financials, materials, commodities, oil in that area, industrials, where we tend to be very tech heavy in the NASDAQ, of course, the S&P, and some in the Dow. So we tend to be tech heavy. They tend to be more value heavy. They tend to have some of their equities, at least over in Europe, might have higher income distributions through dividends. And that can be one way that you can get paid while you're waiting for your stock to outperform. Again, none of this guarantees that you're going to get a positive return on your investment, but it just puts more, let's say, opportunity in front of you to have that positive performance, or at least have potential for a capital gain and income with a strong dividend. And dividends in general are areas that I do find very interesting when you can't really go to the bond market, right, or at your bank and get any real return. But if you own a really high quality stock with a great balance sheet, great product, hopefully great management, barriers to entry, have a dividend, consistently pay a dividend over time, you know, that can protect, maybe lower volatility and create some additional opportunity inside of your portfolio with performance or additional income. And then I was thinking about, okay, where is this market going to go? You know what? This is going to be real fancy comment from me. Maybe it just doesn't go anywhere. You know, we're up pretty good on the S&P and Dow. We're up about 4% on the, or double that on the S&P and Dow. We're only up about 4%, say, on the S&P. So, and we had a good year last year. Who says that we can't just hang out a bit here as we go into summer? You know, this is the reopening. People are thinking about getting out and about. They're not dialed in as much on the computers as they were. They're not so much about the stay at home. They want to get out. They want to travel. This is the peak travel time of the year. And maybe that's what happens. Maybe some of the animal spirits take over in terms of travel and getting out and about. And maybe they look less at their portfolio or the market, or maybe just trade less. Again, there's no crystal ball, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see kind of just that sideways movement as we go through the summer. Stacy, I want to go ahead and turn this over to Lee. I think that's my gist because, I want to give him a good bulk of the time today. So, Lee, if you could, with Data Tech, I'd love for you to jump in and let's go over, you know, all the important topics you're going to cover today. Thanks.
Absolutely, guys. Graham, appreciate the time. Appreciate you guys, you know, as a client, serving you guys, love working with you, love working with Stacy, Jeremy, the whole team.
We pay
let's dive in, guys. There's a lot that I want to try to cover here in a very short amount of time. But I think it's being recorded. You might even be able to go back and take another listen to it. And of course, my information will be up later if you wanted to reach out and talk offline on another conversation. But let's go, guys. Let's dive in here and really see what cybersecurity is up to now, where our threats might be, and what we really need to think through in each of our clicks. And whether you own a business, whether this you're looking at this just as personal, this works and goes across both boards. Our lives blend professionally and they blend personally. So whether you have employees, whether you have an organization, whether this is just you at home in front of your computer, you can practice everything we're going to look at today. So here's a quick overview of our topics that we're going to run through. We'll talk about the dark web and really what is the dark web. Folks throw the term around, but what does that mean? How do you interact with the dark web? And where do these attacks start? A lot of them do start at the dark web. We'll talk about social engineering, which is a buzzword, but it's got a lot of stuff underneath it. We'll talk about the terms that kind of make up what social engineering is: phishing, spear phishing, email spoofing. And we'll look at some very, very recent examples. And I would say recent as in this week and last week that I personally had to work through. We'll talk about malware and ransomware, and then we'll quickly recap. With that, what the dark web is really in a nutshell where these cyber criminals do their business. It is a multi-billion-dollar market. These guys show up to work just like you and I show up to work every day. They have an agenda, they have initiatives, and we are the agenda. Certainly this market is a big agenda. Real estate market, there's really not a market, honestly, that's not an agenda. These guys are after your data. And you might say, well, what is my data? My data is not that important. All right, well, it might not be important to those guys, but they know it's important to you. They want to keep you from your data. And that's where these guys live. They practice. The dark web is their office. And to crack down into really what that looks like, think about an iceberg. You've got the top piece of that, really the internet as a whole, the surface. That's where most of us play. Your Facebook, your Google, your Pinterest, Yahoo, TikTok, Instagram, Walmart, Costco, whatever. It's mainly hanging out there at the very top, the public piece of that. Then you got your private sector of the deep web, not to be confused with the dark web. But this is where the deep web's fine. There's a lot of good stuff still happening at the deep web with your legal, your government agencies, your EMR, your banking, financial, really where probably a lot of the portals and data that Wickham uses to best manage you guys. That's where they're living at that deep web. Nothing wrong there. It's a great sector to live in. And then we got the dark web, and this is where a lot of the illegal activities are taking place. And this is where your data, this is where your social security numbers that have been obtained illegally, whether that's been a data breach through Equifax or a data breach of a portal, a government portal, a state portal that might have your information in it. This is where that information is bought and sold. And that's another way to think through the dark web is, well, all your information is being bought and sold here. And it is not a monitored platform. This is, yes, that we have folks in our agencies that are, trying to protect the U.S. as a whole. Yes, we're looking at the dark web, but there's no rule set here. So anything and everything that you can imagine takes place at the dark web. So that's where your information that's been obtained illegally, being bought and sold, that's where your ransomwares come into play. And if I go secure some data through a ransomware attack, I can go sell your information, sell it at the dark web. So that's where a lot of this stuff really starts to play. And let's dive into social engineering. And then everything we talk through really starts to, hopefully by the end, starts to really form a good picture for you. So we've got the social engineering is really just the art of manipulation. There's a lot of different tactics that go into social engineering, but it's really just learning about you. That way I can send you a little more direct phishing. I can spoof one of your leaders of your organization, or I can spoof if you're in the middle of a closing or a refi. I can spoof your closer and make you wire the funds to an offshore account. So that's kind of how spoofing starts to work. We'll go through an example of that earlier. And just the social engineering, though, is going to come in all different modes and methods. You got the digital side, the mobile side, email being the primary delivery. It's the cheapest, it's the quickest. You can hit the biggest audience there in phishing through email. And that's it, primarily email-based. Social engineering, targeting an organization is phishing. So if I get you to click on a link or I learn about you, social engineer you, I can probably send you a more spear-phished email that might have some data pertaining to you that's going to make you interact with that email and that correspondence a little more. So that's spear phishing. We got smishing. You guys have probably received text messages at different points where it's just asking you for information or validate some information or just click here. That's smishing. And then phishing over voice. And that's something that is happening. You might have even received that call that says, oh, hey, there's a warrant out for your arrest, or your social security number has been breached. Click 1 to go to an operator to discuss more in detail. That's phishing. That's an example of phishing. And as you can see, they're certainly playing off the phishing style concepts through that. So I wanted to throw this up. This is a webpage of ours. This is Dato's webpage, and just kind of wanted to talk through really what social engineering might look like. If I'm the cyber criminal, I've got my cyber criminal hat on here, And what I want you to think, though, as the web page is up here, I want you to think through if you have a web page or your company's web page, or you have a LinkedIn or you have a Facebook, different types of social media. Now I want you to input that here. Because how I'm going to social engineer, I'm just going to use this web page here that's just got, basic examples or a basic terminology, information about our organization. Nothing wrong with it, but it can be used against you. And that's how I'm going to start social engineering. I'm going to start reading. I'm going to find out that Tony Dodd's our president. All right. Well, that's the big fish. That guy's probably going to have some good data coming across his screen. I might try to see what I can get from the president or the owner. I go down here to Mike or Fletcher or Utah, who is on our teams, our engineering team. They've given a bio here. Again, nothing wrong with that. But now I know a little bit more about Mike. I know a little bit more about Fletcher. Now I want you to think through what's on your webpage. Maybe if you're leadership in your organization, or you've got leaders, go look at your webpage and think through it. Go look at your social media platforms. What are you putting on there that I can use against you, that I can find out more info on you to be able to send you a more targeted solicitation of some sort? That might even come in a mailer. I mean, they come in all different forms. Again, email being the primary delivery. You can go look on websites and they'll have the email addresses underneath, maybe Fletcher or Utah. We don't have those there, but think through a lot of websites, you see how to contact them. And they'll have their email address and they'll have their phone number. Well, again, you've given me a lot of information. Nothing wrong with that information, but think of how folks can use it against you, because they unfortunately are. So again, think through how just all your information can be out there on these platforms that you freely give it. How can that be turned around and used against you? So let's talk through maybe a little more detail of how a spear phishing kind of attack might look like, or a spear phishing or a phishing email might look like. So I go in at the dark web, Equifax or any of these, just think through any organization that's been breached that might have your name, your email, and that might be it. Might have a lot more to that. But I get a list. I go on the dark web and I buy, and I'm making up numbers here, I buy 1,000 email addresses for 0.01 Bitcoin, because everything's done through Bitcoin there. So I go on the dark web and I buy 1,000 email addresses, and I can do this. You can do this. Everybody can do this. And I then send out a blanket email to everybody, just maybe, hey, reset your email password, your Gmail password. I'm taking a guess, but out of those 1,000, there's probably 900 people that have a Gmail address. So I've got a pretty good chance of hitting a good audience. And then you click on that. You click and you go to reset your password. Well, at that point, you've given me your username and your password. So then I can go log in directly to your Gmail, and I can start looking at your inbox. You might not even know I'm in there, because I'm just logging in and I'm setting up forwards. But also think through maybe your professional email. You might get these through professional email addresses as well. And you give me that username and password, and then all of a sudden I've got your entire inbox. I can set up a forward rule where every time an email comes through, I get a copy in my inbox. And then I'm just waiting on when I should attack, depending on what you're corresponding in through that email. If you're talking about a big deal, maybe at work, or something, that's got some weight, some good data coming across, certainly got some financial tied to it, that's when I'm going to go launch my attack. And that's when I might lock your computer up, or I might lock your entire network up if I've been able to get in and stay undiscovered. So that's quickly at a high level of how a phishing link can just come to your email and then produce along through and get a lot of access to a lot of different data and some financials. I want to talk through here. This is a real-time example. Of course, I've changed a couple names here, but this is real-time, happened last week. You've got a closer here for an organization. And if I had to take a poll, I wouldn't be surprised to say a lot of you have probably either purchased a home or refied a home in the past 12 to 18 months just due to the rates. So assuming you've done that, this is obviously a big market to attack. But I've got Jennifer Barnes here. I sent Jennifer Barnes, I social engineered their particular lending firm. And I know that Jennifer Barnes is a closer because she clicked on one of those 1,000 emails that I sent out, and she showed me that she was going to click. I went and looked a little more up about her, find out she works at Atlanta Best Mortgage, and she's a closer there because that's what her LinkedIn said, or she put something on her social media, and I found out a little more about her. And now I'm starting to send her a little more spear-fished email that has information related to her. And it might just say, hey, Jennifer, I really need you to reset your password, or this is Microsoft 365. Reset your password for me, or your account's going to be closed down in 24 hours. Jennifer clicks on it, and she exposes her credentials to me. I'm the cyber criminal. So right now, again, I'm going for the big one right here. She's closing on these refis and closing on these purchases of homes or organizations. I mean, she's doing a lot of different stuff at this firm. So now I'm watching her inbox, and she's sending stuff all throughout to different folks. But if you look here, I log into her inbox, and I'm the cyber criminal, but John doesn't know this. I say, good morning, John. My name is Jennifer. I'll be your closing, I'm closing on your home. We need to finalize the close. You'll need to have some cash to wire. I'm setting it up. Let me know when you can take care of this. Later on down the road, he responds and says, yep, let's do this. Send me the new wiring instructions. I'm the cyber criminal. I send over those wiring instructions, those fraudulent ones. John wires his money, $50,000 to an offshore account. He shows up to closing. The closing group looks at him. Well, did you wire the funds? Yeah, you told me an hour ago to go wire those. No, we didn't. And everybody literally stops in their tracks and starts looking at each other like we're in trouble. John now can't close on his home because he's wired his $50,000 that he's worked years to save for. This is real time, guys. But if you look at these emails, you can see up next to Jennifer Barnes, it has settlement agent 21@gmail.com. Look down in her signature that the cyber criminal spoofed. It has Jennifer Barnes at AtlantasBestMortgage.com. But John also didn't notice that there might be a misspelling in Barnes's last name in a couple places. She's got Jennifer Barnes spelled wrong in there, and she got a different E. She got an E added in her email address. There's different fonts, different size fonts up in the main paragraph there. So there's a lot going on that John should have realized, but John was also probably looking at it on one of these guys right here that is harder to see than on a big screen. But there's flags in this email that John could have seen and hopefully picked up the phone and called Jennifer. The other thing that this spoofer took it a hand further was he put a different number down here. So folks, do not drive from this number, because this number could be spoofed and you can end up calling the cyber criminal and talking to them yourself, acting on Jennifer Barnes's behalf. So email spoofing is a big deal. This is happening across the board, not just on the real estate side. All groups and all C-levels and everybody is a target for spoofing. So real quick, we'll move quickly here. We got just a couple minutes. So really malware and ransomware as a whole, if I'm going to get you to click on a generic email, open it up, click on a link, click on an attachment, you're probably going to run into some malware. What malware is going to do, it's going to install some items on the back end of your computer, and you're really not going to know what's going on. I'm watching and figuring out when I want to attack. I might install a keylogger on the back of there. You're typing in your information and constantly, and I'm looking to get all the portals that you're logging into, all your Bank of Americas, your Chase, your Cities, everything, your work, your professional. Then I'm going to launch my ransomware attack. And that's when I'm going to lock everything up, and I'm going to say, well, if this is valuable enough to you, you're going to pay me X amount of funds through Bitcoin. That might equal $10,000, $15,000 in ransomware. So that's how malware and ransomware start to progress from just a simple phishing link. Here's a quick example of what a lot of folks get on the professional email side of an account being suspended. Don't fall for the fear tactic. These guys are using the fear tactics to try to get you to click. we're unable to validate your email, do this, or it's going to shut down, you know, in a matter of days or hours. They're using the fear tactics, and you click here, and then you go to an email address or password page, and then you've given them your credentials. So don't fall for those fear tactics. Real quick, the way you can spot some of these things is hover over your links. Where it says contact us here, hover over these links. Make sure that the verbiage down here really does look like what it's supposed to look like. Look for those HTTPSs as well. That's another thing to look for, but be careful that the HTTPS is in the first one, not the second one, because HTTPS stands for secure. Doesn't always mean it's right, but it stands for secure. If you click on, or if you hover over contact us now, you'll see it's HTTP, and it's just got a bunch of mess behind it. Over here, you've got a link that has HTTPS, but if you hover over it, it's really not. And it has a bunch of mess that says, hey, we really don't want to click this. So use your links, hover over those links to figure out if it's what it's legit and what it might be about. Change your passwords, folks. That's one of the biggest things you can do is change your password. 3 out of 4 of us have the same passwords for our professional as our personal lives, and use complex phrases. Don't use the name of your kid or the name of your pet, stuff that might be on your social medias that can easily be guessed. Don't use significant, dates, marriage dates or birth dates, 19 whatever, 2000 whatever. Don't use those dates. Those are milestones, and they're easily guessed. Another quick thing you can do is turn on multi-factor. Turn it on for anything and everything. You can turn this on all your personal items and all your professional items. Multi-factor is there. It's on all your apps. It is an option. So make sure you're going and turning on your multi-factor so you get that code on your phone when you go to log in. Yes, it can kind of be annoying, but I'd rather have 3 to 4 seconds of annoyance in typing my 6-digit code versus months to years of cleaning up a profile or a breach of an inbox. Quick recap, guys, here. Are you expecting the email, and should it have a link or an attachment? If it shouldn't, and it doesn't usually, then flag should go up. Do I know the person and what the link? Remember, hover over that link. If you don't know the person, it's random, flag should go up. Call the source, call Becky, call the closer, call them with numbers and information that you had early on in paper. Through a process even. Go reference that. Don't reference what's in that email because that could be spoofed. Go to the main websites and drive from the websites. Don't ever reset your passwords through a random email that you got unless you initiated that email and you quickly go over to it and reset an email for validation or something like that, or reset a password. Don't drive from just a random link that you get or a request. Enable that multi-factor on anything and everything that you can. Choose that complex phrase, and careful on joining free wireless access points, Panera Bread, hotels, airports during your travels. You don't have control over how those are set up and configured, so you don't know how loose or tight their security might or might not be. So careful joining those free wireless, and freeze your credits, folks. It's a process, but it's free to do. Freeze your credit. It's one of the best things you can do to protect yourself. I'll open it up. I know it went a couple minutes over, guys, but I'll open it up for maybe a couple quick questions if we have any.
Well, thank you so much, Lee. And I know I gained some valuable insight from that, and I'm sure a lot of folks did. It is kind of scary out there. As a matter of fact, we did get a question for Lee, and someone said that they were they had received a phishing email and they opened it and read it, but they didn't click on the link. So is that okay?
Yeah, great question. I do get that question before. I think I've even gotten one from your group that somebody was asking during our training that I come on site for you guys. And no, you open up that email. That's it. You opened up the email. You didn't interact with a link or an attachment. So that's creating that handshake. When you go to click on that link or you go to click on that attachment, then you might have done some damage right there. But opening the email to review it, no harm right there.
Okay. And here's another one. Someone asked, what's the best way to store their password?
So again, a great question, and there's a lot of different ways. Some people like the old school paper to store it, and they stick it in a bottom drawer somewhere, put it in a safe deposit box. There are apps out there. Make sure you pick a good app, 1Password. Those apps that have been out there a while, doing what they do well, and look for that encryption. You want to be able to multi-factor authenticate to those apps and to those databases that are storing your passwords, because you're putting everything in there. So you can't just loosely put a weak password on that account. And you certainly are going to have multi-factor enabled on that account. So it has to be encrypted as well. But getting it on multi-factor and having a complex phrase on those apps that do store your passwords and all your passwords, still proceed with caution. Make sure you know the organization well and the app well. It's got good reviews, but make sure that it is certainly multi-factor enabled if you are using those apps.
Okay, thank you. Graham, we actually have one for you also. Is there an area of international markets that look better than some of the others?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. A little bit how you look at it, but maybe a little Latin America tend to be less developed or emerging markets. Latin America within emerging markets, valuations tend to still be close to a third. That gap's probably filled in a bit more now of the value in the U.S. So if I had to get a little picky, I think maybe Latin America among the emerging markets. Great question.
Thanks. And then finally, one last question for Graham. It's is it better to invest in growth or value stocks?
I don't know. I think the time where you would wait in one area or the other might be behind us, because I think you have both areas really outperformed, right? Tech really outperformed in 20, and then late in 20 to now, you really had kind of the value, the reopening trades really outperforming. So I think a good old-fashioned barbell strategy completely depends on your goals, objectives, and risk tolerance. So talk to us, talk to your advisor, and see what's best for you. But maybe a barbell approach might be the best.
Okay. Well, thanks so much, Graham and Lee. And thank you all for joining us today. And remember that we will be back every last Wednesday of the month. So please join us on that Wednesday and spend your lunch break with us and learn some helpful information. Hope everybody has a great week, and we'll see you soon.
Take care. Thank you.